been a little bit of a whirlwind since the bowl game. You know, it's unprecedented time in college football on many different levels, just with all the rules around it and all that's going into it. Also, a whole new set of recruiting rules. So, in December, we weren't allowed to go out as coaches, but as soon as literally we flew back on the first, on the first, we opened I think it was a 4 or 5 day window there where we could have recruits on campus from the portal world. Went into a live week of recruiting in January, that early, that it's never been done before. Went into a 3 or 4 day break with the convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then literally hop back out on the road. And it's a live recruiting day every day. So literally even on the weekends you used to get the breaks, but that's full go. So it's kind of been a whirlwind. So I just wanted to kind of give some updates. First, wanted to say, you know, to all the guys, we didn't really get to do service to the guys returning. I did a lot of work in December on guys that I knew could jump in the portal, or guys that could obviously go to the NFL. Had to wait on the NFL draft grades to come back, right? So two of our biggest targets were obviously Xavier and Gabe, and had actually gotten their grade reports back right before we left, so I was able to kind of sit down and visit with them, but I didn't want to put pressure on them at the bowl game and all that goes into it. So we kind of had some conversations immediately after the bowl game, had some final thoughts with them, and then an added bonus with obviously with JC to jump in. Luke obviously made his decision early, and then there were several other guys I know were approached by other teams. And fortunately, we're able to keep most of those guys. So really excited about all the guys that we have returning. You know, so anywhere from 17, 18, 19, or 22, whatever it is, we got a lot of guys coming back. And a year ago, you know, in January, kind of reset your roster, and I knew we were going to be a heavy sophomore and junior laden team, which got me excited about what was going to have the chance to come back. So next year's roster, heavy senior oriented team. I've also added some new guys as well. So we officially have all 24 guys that we thought were going to be with us have joined us officially now, registered for classes. A couple late additions, but obviously was able to add in the Clement brothers from West Virginia, some guys that really kind of came up on our radar to have both Hudson and Murph join us. Very excited. Hudson will be at the wide receiver room. Obviously, Murph will be in the DB room. Really think they bring some maturity, especially in the wide receiver room, that we're excited to. We're going to also add Keelan Crimmins, who actually just joined us. Had some hurdles to jump through with a foreign student from Australia, even though he's a transfer from Purdue. Just had to work through some things there. Aiden Kanopik is a guy that joined us, or actually visited us early in December, and had a lot of things coming at him fast. There was a coaching change at his school, a guy that played a lot of football at left tackle that we're excited to get in it, and then to have him join us. And then Davin Stoffel is a guy that played some good football and at South Dakota, and then was able to join us on a visit. It was kind of a whirlwind recruiting tour from him. I think he went west and east and everywhere in between, and then joined us in the end. So really excited about it. I know a couple guys have asked questions about Crimmins. He does have 1 year of eligibility, but we're going to try to get 2. We'll see how everything plays out. We just got some things to work through there and go into it. You know, we did have a variety of guys this year play through some injuries that they delayed their surgeries. I think we've had a total of 7 guys now have postseason injuries that were taken care of surgically. Some of those guys will be with us not until the fall. I'm not going to get into it because there's still 2 or 3 surgeries yet this week that we're working through, and I'll kind of give an update. Next time we'll get together is on Wednesday the 5th in February, when we can have another signing day. I'll have some information, some updates there. As far as my coaching staff, I know a couple people have inquired. Last week it was a little bit of when the NFL season comes to an end, it all opens up a new hiring process, which you know, I've lost some guys to the NFL during my career, and this year in the last 5 days, I think I've heard from 4 NFL teams. A couple of my young bucks, some of my young coaches are in the interview process. Some of my current staff, so I'm kind of just holding tight on really making any announcements until all that stuff is finalized. I don't want to give anybody else's announcement, but for me and my staff, the core group of guys, my 10 main coaches, for the most part, feel really good about all those guys being back in the mix. Josh has afforded us the opportunity to sign those guys to new contracts that'll all get announced here sooner than later, approving a board approval. So working through the things there. In addition to that, the season as it lays out, right? We have 12 guaranteed opportunities, obviously, to open up the season, and have an opportunity to open up at home, similar to what we did a year ago with an in-state FCS opponent, and then to go on the road against Duke, and to come back and have 7 straight games out of the gate, with the last one being at home against Ohio State, and then jump into a bye week, 2 games, and then a bye week, and then 2 of our last 3 games. We started preparing on that literally last Tuesday, and we'll make a go from there. With that being said, I think that's about it. There's a lot of things I'm sure you guys are going to ask about. The only other thing I was going to say, congratulations to the Buckus Award. We're going to have that award next Saturday night. I unfortunately won't be able to be there because it's my last night of live recruiting. I'll be on the road. I think I'm going to currently be in Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. But very excited about the Buckus Award returning here to campus. And I know Josh has worked on that for a while. We'll have some of our linebacker core and some people there that hopefully going to be a mainstay from that world come forward. One of my former players, Monty Ball, is getting inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame. Absolutely just probably truly one of my favorite journeys and stories. A lot of triumph, but also a lot of adversity that we dealt with. And Monty has championed it all, and really excited for him to jump into it. And then, I was kind of brought to my attention a couple things of note. I think the largest application process for the University of Illinois general student body in the history of the school. And I'm not saying that was a direct result to us, but I know a lot of people correlate that. And really excited about the momentum on our campus. I know a lot of preseason rankings have come out. I'm not going to run away from that, but on the same account, I told our guys, and I mean this, like, hey, the 12 guaranteed opponents we have next year are obviously very important. They're a very tough task each week, but our biggest challenge is from our own staff, right? From our own team, from our own roster. We got to be able to control our environment and to get to where we want to go. So super excited about that. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Coach, 4 incoming transfers from the front 7 of the defense. 3 of those kids are from Wisconsin. Can you just comment on what those 4 guys bring?
Yeah, independently, Leon, was probably the first. It might have been the first commit. I don't know. We didn't go after that look, right? We went after players. Leon actually got in the portal a year ago. When he went in, I watched him that night he went in and was very intrigued with him at that point. Things moved pretty quickly for him to go to Wisconsin, so he committed. So obviously we didn't play them this year, but when I saw his name jump back in, I knew him already, and that's why I kind of moved quicker than later. And then the other 2 guys, James, is a player. I remember when we played 2 years ago, was someone to be formidable. I called Jimmy right away, just kind of checking. Like you always have perspective when you know a lot of coaches, and I knew Jimmy was there with him. I reached out to Paul as well, and just want to make sure what I was seeing was real, and I thought James would be a great fit. And then Kurt, actually, I think today all the guys are getting introduced, right, or they're going to be present. Kurt will not be there because he's cleaning out his apartment in Madison. Don't think anything of it. He's already enrolled in school and everything here, but I just thought those 2 guys up front in the interior were going to bring us some really good value. Just played a scheme that was similar to us in the past, and I thought their ability to come in and make a contributing factor for us would be quick.
The kid from Florida State.
Yeah, actually, we first watched him. He was at West Virginia before that, and actually before that, he was at Kentucky. So he's a guy that's been around a little bit. I watched him before he went to Florida State, so we were involved with him a year ago. You talk about Tommy, right? And Tommy was a really impressive kid at West Virginia, and the part that I thought he brought great flex. He can be a little bit of defensive end, a little bit of interior player, really good value.
Brett, obviously you're making a big recruiting push in 2026. Is there a different feel or even reality in recruiting after a 10-win season, and how do you guys take advantage of that?
Brett ushered me in from over here. We have a large group on campus right now that, in my opinion, is probably a collection of the highest rated and guys that we feel really strongly about being able to impact us. Really, since the bowl game, I mean this wholeheartedly, like the amount of value that bowl game brought us. Obviously in Orlando it's been really good, but also just going into schools from coast to coast. I've literally been all over the country. Last week I was primarily in Florida. The first week I was mainly in Illinois. I always start with the foundation here in Illinois, and I thought that notification of what we've done here the last 4 years was very, very evident. And then I spent 3 days out in Jersey, last week all in Florida. This week is kind of a hodgepodge. I'll be a little bit in the St. Louis area, and then I'll be in I'm going to go to Mobile for the Senior Bowl Wednesday morning, and then I'll be in two towns in Florida. We had our flight changed last week in Florida because of snow, which had never been done in my time. I was in Jacksonville and was supposed to fly into Tallahassee and was told I couldn't do that because of snow, which I'd never heard before in Florida, so that was a new one. And then, I spent the last part of the week really kind of all over the Midwest. So, yeah, it's been very, very evident. It's been awesome to see the hard work that we put in is paying off, but also just the recognition that the players having us. It's kids that are committed to other schools are talking to us. Guys that we're in consideration for, guys that have committed to us. We're competing against the biggest of bigs, right? So it's really a fun time.
I know you mentioned preseason rankings are coming out, and obviously people think highly of what you guys can be next year. So how is your program or your team equipped to handle some of those?
Great question. I'd be concerned if I didn't have a lot of really good returning players that have been in this building. I think to bring – we literally brought in 24 newcomers in January. There was 12 high school and 12 portal guys. So that means obviously there's a good chunk of new guys, but we just have so many strong veteran returning players, up front to have Josh Kreutz be the anchor of that. But right next to him is Josh Geske, who's been here a long time. JC's now in his second year. Melvin's in his second year. In the tight end world, even though he started as a transfer for us, Tanner Ark in that tight end room is incredible. On the perimeter, I thought the growth of Malik Elzy, of Kapka Jones, and Hank Beatty played a great bowl game. Hank Beatty is our DNA to its fullest, and you saw that come. Our running backs are all guys that have been with us the whole time. And obviously Luke Meyer going into his third year. Then on the defense side of the ball, up front, you got guys that have been experienced, been a part of it. Gabe Ackus to start with, just really Dylan Rosiak at the mid level, and in the back end you have Xavier, you have Miles, you have Matt, you have some corners that are in our system now a couple times. So we have so many returning players. I think they understand the chip on their shoulder, but I don't take for granted like we have to literally rebuild our team emotionally, physically, and kind of mentally every year, and it's probably one of the more enjoyable parts of my job.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned a little bit about your coaching staff. How important is it for you and your program to get some of your coaches to climb up the ladders, not only at the NFL level, but also at the collegiate level? How important is it for you to foster that and develop those coaches?
I appreciate the question. It's kind of an independent value, right? Like, listen, I know early on in my coaching career, I was always trying to go somewhere where I wasn't, right? Your feet just want to naturally move forward. So when you're not, if you're not a coordinator, if you're not the head coach, you're always looking for that next opportunity. And Coach Fry always said there's two types of coaches. There's coaches that, try to find their next job, or they're ones that take care of the one they have, and they'll find you, right? And I've always kind of tried to be in that realm myself. I know when my first coordinator job came, I definitely wanted it, but I'm glad I didn't get it. And a head coach guided me through that moment. My first head coaching opportunity, the first time I ever interviewed for a head coaching job, was at Ball State, and as bad as I wanted, I'm glad I didn't get it because it allowed me to become the defense coordinator at Wisconsin, eventually the head coach. So I kind of take that perspective with my staff. I got a call last week, and one NFL organization wanted to interview two of my guys, and I talked to both those guys independently. I thought it was kind of good for one. I didn't know if it was good for the other. And then, I just kind of take each individual opportunity as that moment. A lot of times I promoted from within all my coordinator hires. Aaron Henry made a huge jump last year as a defense coordinator. I think it was because of the growth we had in his first year. Barry Lunny, again, probably, in my opinion, coaching as good at football as he's ever had. I think both of those guys are on the verge of making their own opportunities, right? But I'm really glad that I have them for this year and what's in front of us. I'm always happy for others. I always tell our coaches in the world of college football, advancement is awesome. Just keep me in the loop. So we just kind of talk through things and handle each moment for what it is.
Bret, can you talk about your relationship with Josh in that regard too, of being able to keep retention in your staff and having it be proactive instead of reactive to what the marketplace is for your
Josh
staff?
Whitman?
Yeah.
I'll give Josh a lot of credit. Even my first year, we had maybe 2 wins, 3 wins at the time, and he kind of came during our bye week and talked about what we want to do to keep the staff continuity. He saw who we had, right, and that kind of made a statement to me back then just about we're not dealing with a guy that wanted to be reactive. He's a proactive person, and that for me has been absolutely a lifesaver. We've got good coaches. I knew this year when we were in the season that we were having a good year, and I knew I thought we'd probably play well down the stretch, and because of that, people come after our guys. So it was interesting. One of the organizations that called me was a guy that called me and hired 2 of my guys last year, 2 of my former, one current and one in my past. So people are understanding of what we do here, right? And I think that's really, really positive. But Josh has been awesome, proactively. Not only sometimes it's obviously financially, but a lot of times it's also just little things around it. Whether it be how we're taking care of them, how we're supporting them, how we treat them. Obviously, in the Smith Center, I try to make it as good as humanly possible, but they're in a part of the community, and the more we can help their kids and their families and people be a part of the community, that helps all of us tenfold.
Coach, what were these first few weeks like for those early enrollee freshmen, like integrating them, getting them up to speed?
It was funny. Probably a good question for them, but I was on the road. So this year, because of the end date of our season, we were able to start on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. So we snuck in an extra week of discretionary week, and so our guys' first workout was this past Wednesday, and I think it was Step. Step had talked to Braden Trimble's either mom or dad. I don't know who he talked to. Braden had made reference like, "Hey, this is a different level here," and even just some of our guys, Tank, he gets into them pretty quick, and we have 3 lifting groups each day, and so we went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday this week, and it's setting the tone early. We kind of carried some of the things we did a year ago, but we made some adaptations. We have 13 points of accountability every day that they got to handle, and that's before we even talk about the workout. So there's some things set in place for them that they've never seen before. Just even the way we eat, the way we soft tissue recovery, the way we recover, all those things are just so different for these kids. I sat in the first meeting on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. I usually do it the night before, but we've never had a national championship game on Martin Luther King Day, right? So it was a new world. So I pushed the meeting from Monday night to Tuesday morning, and outside of our meeting room, we have a big table that everybody puts their cell phones on. So you don't walk into our meetings with cell phones, right? And it's been my rule ever since we came here, and it's just kind of a way of life. I've literally said it before the first meeting. I've never repeated it ever again. And so I came around the corner and I saw that whole table of cell phones, right? And I literally walked into that newcomer meeting. I said, "How many of you guys coming from other places have ever had to put your cell phones outside the meeting room?" And they had never experienced that before, right? And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I just know how we do things, right? And I think those things are probably the biggest adjustments to those guys more than if you're a Division I football player, the physical workouts really aren't. I mean, they're hard, but they're not out of the norm, right? It's expected, I would hope, right? So I think it's all the little things about the way we do things that really make it hard for them.
Brett, I know you've always here in the back.
Yeah.
I know you've always really made a priority of Illinois high school recruits, but downstate class of 2026 is loaded.
Yeah.
And you've had great success with downstate kids. How much of a priority and how much do you sell them on that?
One of the things that we talk a lot about in our program is history repeats itself often, right? And the success we've had downstate with our recruiting. You look at Caden Fagan, you look at Aiden Lawfrey, you look at Hank Beatty. Hank Beatty, I think, was literally one of my first Zooms. I always love it because Hank Beatty was from Rochester, and the story of the coaches involved in his past, right? And Coach Ken Leonard, who is Derek Leonard's dad, was one of the first high schools I was ever in the state of Illinois in 1995. I remember going to Coach Leonard's Sacred Heart Griffin, and then I met Derek, and he was probably like a little kid at the time, right? It shows how old I'm getting. But to see Hank Beatty make that catch in the bowl game that probably gave us the third down conversion to help us win that game, and to think about Derek's help and influence on helping us land. Hank is really, really awesome. I remember his first Zoom sitting there with mom and dad, and then to come full circle, he was our first really downstate kid that we got, and look at effect on him. He's literally led the Big Ten in punt returns, one of the best in the country, and he's from little old Rochester High School, right? And then they have Aiden and Caden the way they are in the room, and several other guys from downstate here. 2026 in the state of Illinois is actually loaded, but also downstate. Yeah, I was in a basketball game last night that. I watched a young man play that I because of what I know and what I've seen, this kid will not only be a player in college, he'll play in the NFL, right? And I think the fun part for me is to watch young men who you offer as sophomores in high school literally transition from their sophomore tape to their junior tape, and you know what's coming their senior year, and then you realize when you get them here and what they can do, that's the stuff that changes people's lives.
Hey, Brett. I have 2 related questions.
Yep.
It seems unusual how many players you guys have coming back in this climate. The fact that you have that going for you, just how vital is it not to lose momentum, to deliver next season? Is the momentum fragile enough that if you don't really bounce back with a good season, you could kind of have to wind the clock back? And then speaking of basketball, Can you imagine having to do something along the lines of what Brad Underwood had to do, essentially rebuild an entire roster in one offseason?
Yeah, I'll answer that one first, just because I don't have any idea. Listen, I don't give Brad any advice. I gladly take any he gives me, but I don't understand basketball. I remember I was at Wisconsin. I was a wrestler. I wasn't a basketball player, so we had pretty good basketball when I was there. I love Bo. Bo and I got along great. You may not want to hear that, but they invited me to the Chicago for the Big Ten basketball tournament. And I remember I was around a basketball team, and I went over to a shoot-around, and it was like, 3 or 4 hours for the game, and these guys are loose as a goose and having fun. I'm like, holy shit, I couldn't do this one. It's a wholly different temperament, right? And you're dealing with such a smaller number, right? They have, 15 scholarship players. Like we have last year I had 120. So the numbers are so different. I love watching Illinois basketball. Brad has been instrumental. Caden Fagan committed really because of Kofi, to be honest. I think that's what pushed him over there. A lot of what we did is there, but Kofi had a couple words with him that literally changed the direction of his recruiting. That was really awesome. So Brad has been unbelievable to me. Josh hooked us up when I was beginning to talk about this. So, Shauna is my next door neighbor, my women's basketball. So I was at the women's basketball game a week ago, and my daughters loved it. I loved it. It was awesome. So that's different. As far as expectations, I appreciate the question. I just never think of things that way. I never think about what if we don't do well. I don't go that road. I just think about what we do. And to your earlier point about what Josh, when we started going down this road together, I literally told him, like, listen, I'm not going to look for the newest uniforms. Of course, we just had 7 new helmets every game, but in a Michigan game, that was pretty awesome. But I said, listen, I don't need like shiny, flashy, bright. I'm going to probably ask our food budget to go higher than it's ever been. I'm going to ask that our players are protected in ways that give them the most safe environment to not only practice in and play in, but prepare in. Since we've been here, Josh, moved up and the DIA moved up to the installation of fields that I think gave our guys a safer environment, and just little things gave our guys customized helmets they'd never had before. We spent a lot of money on things that protected our players, and I think that's a huge part of it. I really think the reason we can retain players is we never lie to our players. I never mislead them. The little day-to-day things we do with them come back tenfold. I look and I see these guys losing. Like I took some of the best players, in my opinion, from other teams, or guys that I think are really good players, and I'm like, if I was on the receiving end of that the other way, like I'd lose my mind. I didn't want to go see J.C. Davis the night before Christmas. All right, my wife sure as heck didn't want me to, but like I knew it was important to him, but also to us. I thought Jeremy made a great point. Like they got all these portal rankings. Well, the reason we don't have a high ranking is everybody that could have gotten a portal for us stayed. And I remember there was a day where. We had we had a player that a team a little bit south of us that rhymes with Moo reached out to one of our players, and then a team out west who used to be in a different conference reached out to one of our guys, and like those things are happening in college football. I can't really control that, right? But what I can control is what we can tell them, what we can do if they stay. And that's what we lean on. That's what we believe in, and it's worked pretty well for us. But I think next year is a big year, right? Like it's one thing to have a lot of good players back, but to get a lot of good players to play well together is very important. So leadership is going to be everything, and it's going to be a daily grind, but it's one that I think our guys are ready to embrace and see where it goes.
Bret, you mentioned Aaron showed a lot of growth. You were a first-time play caller at one point. In what ways did you see him grow?
Yeah. Again, history repeats itself. So when I took over at the University of Wisconsin, I hired a guy by the name of Mike Hankwitz who had been really good. I had a young buck by the name of Dave Dorn who I thought was really good. Mike moved on. I promoted Dave, and the first year Dave was a DC. It wasn't exactly pretty, but it was good. And then, 2 years later, we started to run 3 straight Big Ten titles. I knew Aaron would improve. I had to make some changes around him, which weren't enjoyable, but there were things I needed to do. J-Mo really, I think, stepped up his game. I think the addition of Archie and Corey have been invaluable in what they brought, but also these young coaches. The value of having 5 more younger coaches who had all on defense in particular, K. Rich, Grant, and Trent Harris had all played for me. Alex Panos, I played against his dad, which is crazy, but he'd been in our program for a little bit. And I brought in Myers Hendrickson over on the defense side of the ball from Western Illinois. So it was just like all these little things that tied together and made it good. But Aaron, I think his composure, I think his ability to process, listen, and understand. I thought our bowl game preparation was incredibly detailed, and there were some things that I said, but it was really Aaron's concepts of what we did to take away what they could do to win that really, I think, won the game. So Aaron's extremely intelligent, an incredibly gifted communicator. He does really listen well. Sometimes he'll answer too quickly, and I talked about that, and I think he just had a better year of listening to what others were trying to tell him, and the results speak for itself. But bottom line is he's a really good coach that can motivate and get people going in the right direction, and an incredible, valuable asset to our program.